I'm here at the Crystal River site in Crystal River, Florida, and behind me is the burial mound. The mound is shaped, has an outer ring of earth, and then in the center of the mound is another central pile of earth, creating a symbol known as the circumpunct or circled dot. Among the Maya, that symbol is also a star symbol, but the Maya believed that the souls of the dead went to the stars upon death, and so here we have a burial mound that is in the shape of a star symbol, which is consistent with Mayan religious beliefs. Within this burial mound were found many unique pieces of pottery. One of the pieces of pottery, researchers in the Maya world call this type of pottery mammiform tetrapods, which just means breast-shaped 4 feet. And this type of pottery looks like a human breast with 4 tiny feet on the bottom of the pot. This type of pottery is unique to the Maya, and it was only produced by them during a very short period of time between 0 AD and 250 AD. And this type of pottery in the Maya world was only found in burials. Well, here at Crystal River site, we also have several mammiform tetrapod pots here, and they also were found date between the years 0 and 250 AD and were only found in the burial mound. So both in the Maya world and here at Crystal River, you have the exact same type of pottery made during the same time period and found in the same context in burials. So I believe that's a very strong connection to the Maya. There were also other pottery found at this site. There was pottery with what I believe are Mayan glyphs on it. The Maya had several glyphs for Venus, and one of those glyphs was cross-shaped with 4 circles in the corners, the inside corners of the cross. And that was one of their Mayan Venus glyphs. And there was also another one that was diamond-shaped with the 4 circles on the outside of the diamond, and then another Mayan Venus glyph that took those 2 ideas and combined them into one. They took the cross-shaped, and then in the center of the cross placed the diamond. Well, here at Crystal River, we have found several pots from this burial mound that have the Mayan Venus glyph on it. One pot, on the bottom of the pot, you have the cross-shaped Mayan Venus glyph with the 4 circles on the inside corners of the cross. But you also have a second version right on the same bottom of the pot. Some artisan connected the outside arms of the cross to create a diamond, and then outside that diamond they created an additional 4 circles, therefore creating the second version of the Mayan glyph. Now on that same piece of pottery, on the outside of the pottery, you see these flint knife symbols on the outside of the pottery. On the top of the pot, there's another cross-shaped Mayan Venus glyph, and each arm of the cross ends with one of these flint blades, creating thus a flint knife appearance. The Maya believed in their worldview, they associated Venus with flint knives and said its rays were like flint knives or spears with flint points at the end. So here you have a pot with 2 Mayan Venus glyphs on it, also with flint knives around, which is also consistent with Maya beliefs. So that's another connection to the Maya. There's a pottery fragment also that has been found here, and there's enough of the fragment remaining that is easily recreated, because we know this type of pottery, which is called Swift Creek Complicated Stamped, it had both vertical and horizontal symmetry. So if you have enough of the fragment, you can easily recreate the design. And so I took the fragment, I duplicated it both vertically and horizontally, and what it produced was a cross-shaped symbol with a diamond inside. That's another exact duplicate of a Mayan Venus glyph. So you have 3 of the Mayan Venus glyphs on here, on pottery that was found in this burial mound behind me. More importantly, the archaeologists who researched this pottery said that the clay that these specific pots were made from is not found here anywhere in the peninsular Florida area. So where did this pottery come from? Who was making it? Where was it coming from? So that's really, a question that really needs to be looked into to really decide, what this site really is. The pottery that was found in this burial mound behind me with the Venus glyphs is very consistent with Mayan belief. So they were found in a burial mound that was shaped like a Mayan star symbol, and the pots themselves have Mayan Venus glyphs on them. So it's all consistent with Mayan beliefs. The Maya associated religious ideas with Venus because Venus throughout the year, it starts as the evening star, and then it stays the evening star for several months, and then it disappears for 50 some odd days, and then reappears as the morning star, rising just before the sunrise. And so among the Maya, they use this as sort of a religious allegory to represent life, death, and then rebirth. So the fact that these Mayan glyphs were found in a star-shaped burial mound is sort of consistent with Mayan beliefs that Venus is associated with life, death, and rebirth. And so the context in which these pottery with the symbols were found is completely consistent with Mayan beliefs. And what we have here behind me is Mound G, which was another burial mound, but you don't find the exquisite pottery in here. This mound was filled just with local style pottery from 3 different pottery traditions that date back for a long time period in this area. So we know that local Native Americans were being buried at this site, if not also living at this site. That then begs the question of, okay, so we have Native Americans, 3 different groups living here, and we also have this Maya influence. What's really going on here? So to me, what it reminds me of is a Spanish mission. But this would be the Mayan version, 1,500 years before the Spanish ever arrived in Florida. This would be the Mayan version of a mission. This is a Mayan mission. So what the Spanish did when they first arrived in Florida in the 1500s is they didn't come en masse and relocate to Florida. What they did was they built missions, and then they would bring in local Native American tribes to live in that mission, convert them to Christianity, and then they would then bring them into their trade networks. They would use them for labor. They helped, build the fort at St. Augustine with Native American labor. And the Native Americans would provide food, and they would provide raw resources from the area, medicinal plants, anything else that they could provide that could be incorporated into the Spanish trade network. This is exactly what this site here at Crystal River seems like, except a Mayan version of that. Just like at Spanish sites, you see Christian imagery. Here at Crystal River, you see Mayan religious imagery. And so it seems like this was a place where the Maya converted local Native Americans into their religious system, and then utilized them to provide raw materials for the mega cities that were developing back in the Maya world. At the time that the Crystal River site was rising, this was during what's called the pre-classic Maya site, and there were huge, millions of people, now it has been determined, was living in this area. And you had some of the biggest cities the Maya ever built were actually built during the pre-classic, El Mirador being a case in point, with one of the largest pyramids the Maya ever built. And then there was the pre-classic collapse. And this was around the same time period that people were arriving here, that Crystal River had a growth spurt. So either, so Crystal River probably began as just a place to supply raw materials to these mega cities in the Maya world. And it's just like we do today. The developing nations exploit the raw materials of the undeveloped nations. The first world countries exploit the third world countries, and I'm sure that's what was going on here. I'm sure they were taking slaves from here back to the Maya world. They were taking raw materials back to the Maya world, medicinal plants, different types of seashells, gold from the North Georgia mountains, the palygorskite clay from Georgia that they used in the recipe for their very, very important Maya blue, that they painted religious sacrificial people and important murals with that Maya blue. And they haven't found the source of that Maya blue, all of it, in Mexico yet. So this was definitely, could have been a source for that. So they were definitely, it seems very, very consistent with what the Spanish would do 500 years later. So that's why I think, this was a Mayan mission site. Mound H, you can barely see it behind me there in the distance, but this was a very unique mound according to the archaeologists who excavated this site. They said no other mound anywhere, has this shape. It's a unique shape. It's shaped like sort of a stunted T. It's a very linear mound with a wide ramp coming down from the top, giving it a T-shaped. The archaeologists also noted something else when they excavated it. The mound had been enlarged at least 3 times, but each time they enlarged it, they were very careful to keep the exact same proportions, which sort of insinuated that this shape was really important to whoever built it. And this is unusual because there are other mounds throughout the southeast that were built and rebuilt and enlarged over time, and they were never careful about keeping the shape the same. They would go from rectangles to squares, squares to rectangles. The shape would change over time, each time it was reconstructed, but not this mound. And so you have to ask the question, why? Well, this mound is actually built in the shape of another Mayan glyph, which would make this a geoglyph, a glyph made of earth, but it's actually made of limestone rock that was found here on the site. This glyph in the Maya world is what's called the Ik glyph, spelled I-K, pronounced Eek, and it means wind, air, but it also has spiritual connotations, meaning breath of life and spirit. And so that would explain why whoever built this mound was very, very careful to keep the proportions exactly the same so it wouldn't lose its meaning. Inside of the mound, the archaeologists excavated in the center of the mound, and they discovered a deposit of seashells. Well, that's very consistent with the Maya association with wind and air, because they believed seashells were the source of all air. I assume this comes from the phenomena when you put a seashell to your air, it sounds like you're at the beach, you hear wind and air blowing. So I assume that's probably the origination of that idea. But so to find these seashells in the center of this T-shaped mound in the shape of the Mayan glyph for air and wind and breath of life and spirit it supports the theory that this mound was meant to represent the Mayan glyph for air. It's also interesting that it has those religious associations with spirit and breath of life, because this whole site is a burial site. There are 2 burial mounds. One, based on the artifacts found in it for commoners and locals, and another where the exquisite artifacts were found for higher ranked people. So the fact that they have a mound here in the shape of the Mayan glyph Ik, which has the spiritual connotations of breath of life, and spirit, is again consistent with the overall Mayan symbology at this site. Here at the park, there were also some standing stones, which you can see here inside this fence here, which archaeologists refer to as stele. And so you see one here. It aligns. There is another stele across. Get a good look at the stele here. There's another stele across the site, all the way over on the other side of the site, that it aligns with. And so this stele behind me, it aligns with another stele across the site, and this aligns with the winter solstice sunrise. When you line these 2 points up, this stele here and the stele right here, to the stele across the park, it aligns with the winter solstice sunrise. We have the stele across the park also aligns with the large flat top pyramid at the site called Mound A, and that alignment is with the summer solstice sunrise. So you have 2 solar alignments based around one stele, stele 2, across the site. This is another. The Maya always align their sites with solstices, with equinoxes, with various stars, including Venus was one of the really important ones. So this is again consistent with Maya site design. Another view of the burial mound. You can see the central mound, and then it's encircled by another outer embankment, circular embankment of earth, taking on the form of a Mayan star symbol. This mound is right near Stela 1, which is the largest standing stone on the site. And this is a stone that is the center of the 2 solar alignments, the one with the winter solstice sunrise and the other the summer solstice sunrise. Behind me here is Stela 1. This is the standing stone that has both of the solar alignments. One with Mound A, which is a summer solstice sunrise alignment, and one with Stela 1, which is the winter solstice sunrise alignment. In front of me, I'm walking towards Mound A. This is the largest flat top temple mound at this site. This is the location from where it aligns with Stele 2 across the plaza here with the summer solstice sunrise. So I'm standing in front of what's called Mound A here. This is the largest of the flat top pyramids at this site. According to the archaeologists who excavated this site and radiocarbon dated it, these are the oldest flat top pyramids outside of Mexico. After this time period, this type of architecture would spread all through the southeast and the Midwest of the US, but this is where it began. These are the oldest. And so you have to ask the question, why? Why this type of architecture during this time period? Why here? Did the locals just all of a sudden invent flat top pyramids? Or did someone who has already had that architectural tradition come here and use their labor, of course, to build them? So Certainly the Native Americans themselves built these flat top pyramids, but were they the reason they were built? We could say that the Mohawk Indians of New York, the Mohawk tribe, are the ones who built the skyscrapers of New York City, and we'd be right. They are in fact the ones who provided the labor to build many of those skyscrapers, but they weren't really the reason the skyscrapers were built. There were people higher up in the food chain, so to speak, who caused those skyscrapers to be built. I think the same thing can be said here. The local Native Americans certainly provided the labor to build these flat top pyramids, but they were not the reason, the impetus for why these pyramids were built in the first place. And so you have to, when you look at the preponderance of the evidence, the overall pattern of the evidence, you see these are the oldest flat top pyramids in the US, the first of their kind outside of Mexico. You have the Mayan glyphs on the pottery. You have the unique form of pottery, the mammiform tetrapods. You have the Mayan religious symbolism of the Mayan glyph-shaped mound with its associations with spirit and breath of life, and the star-shaped mound with its association with the afterlife, where the Maya believed that the souls went after death, and the Venus glyphs on the potteries, which also have the spiritual associations with life, death, and rebirth. And so the pattern of the evidence suggests it just doesn't seem likely that the local Native Americans created all these things, the totality of it, independently. You know, that's not the most reasonable explanation. Now, I don't know if Native Americans went there and were influenced, but again, you have to remember, the advanced civilization was Mexico. The people living in Florida at the time were hunters and gatherers, and before this time hadn't built anything larger than a sand burial mound. So which is the more likelier explanation? That Native Americans went to Mexico and were influenced and came back and then copied what they had seen? Or that Maya came here and missionized the Native Americans here in order to exploit them for labor and resources back in their expanding metropolises at the time. Based on human nature as we see it today, the first world exploiting the third world, the advanced civilizations exploiting the less advanced civilizations. So it would seem the most likely situation here that the Maya were here. I don't know in how many numbers. Maybe it was just one family, two families of traders, maybe only a priest who stayed here full year. That's what the Spanish did. They would have just one priest who lived at their missions year round, and most of the Spanish lived back either at St. Augustine or back in Spain. They didn't come here en masse. I don't think the Maya came here en masse. I think maybe either one religious person or maybe one trading family with a religious person was at this site. But it eventually spread. This type of architecture, this type of pottery, it spread throughout the Southeast very quickly. And so at that point you have to ask the question, how many traders were here? Because I don't think one family of traders was responsible for what we see happening in the Southeast at this time.